Welcome back to the Nocturnal Tavern, the place for your weekly recap of all the things that are going on in EverQuest Legends. I'm your host, Nocturne, and today is August 13th, 2026. This is Episode 1, The Lord and Lady. August 13th also happens to be my birthday, and apparently I decided to celebrate this trip around the sun in front of my microphone, trying to pronounce all kinds of EverQuest names without embarrassing myself. What could possibly go wrong? Well, after the feedback I received from last week's episode, we already have a few of those answers. And given the likelihood that this is going to keep happening, I decided it's probably best for me to just dedicate an entire segment to this. And we're going to call it Bristlebane's Blunders. Because apparently learning how to record and produce my first episode wasn't nearly complicated enough, I decided I needed to throw in a recurring segment with another alliterative title. Yep, this should just make everything much easier for me. So the first blunder comes from several people informing me that I sounded like I was just reading from a script. That's 100% fair criticism, because for most of the episode, that's exactly what I was doing. Now, to be clear, this is the first podcast I've ever made. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of winging it. So I was so focused on remembering everything and just getting through the material that I leaned a little too heavily on the page that was sitting in front of me. And I honestly appreciate the critique. I want this show to get better, and that requires, having people that are willing to tell me when something's not working. So if you're listening, please feel free to give me feedback. I just keep it coming, but just don't be gratuitously mean. The goal this week is to give myself more room to speak naturally. I'm still going to have a script. I'm looking at it as I say these words. Because if I didn't, then if you know me in real life, you know that this would easily become a 7 to 8 hour long episode of me wandering through half finished sentences. But I don't want to sound like I'm reading an instruction manual either. That's the goal anyway. So the next topic concerns the show notes from the previous episode 000. I had said that the macro text and the social links were going to be found in the show notes. Well, it turns out that when I made that claim, I had no idea where the show notes lived. I didn't know where to go to actually put that text in there. I've since fixed that little problem. The show notes are now in there with the macro text and the social links. Another correction, I don't know if you want to call it a correction really, but it was an omission. I mentioned in one of the segments about targeting and conning. Turns out I never actually said how you con a mob. I gave you all this great insight about how to target a mob and said, hey, don't just target, make sure you con the mobs also. The way to do that, the default keybind for doing that is the C button on your keyboard. I also somehow managed to omit what my actual in-game information is. As you might have been able to have guessed at this point, my character's name is Nocturne, and I play on the Freeport server. So those are this week's Bristlebane's Blunders. Man, got that on the first try. And I'm sure there we go. I'm sure Bristlebane's is already preparing material for next week. I mean, literally just did. He got me. Okay, and before we actually kind of get started on the episode here, I just want to give a quick shout out to a couple of YouTube channels I've been watching a lot lately. The first I want to give a shout out to is a channel that goes by the name, and prepare yourself here, Umbrella Was Behind Everything. That's the name of his channel. Now, he's been streaming a lot of EverQuest Legends since towards the end of the beta, really, or the open beta. He seems like another late night streamer. So if you're somebody who works nights, or you're just one of those people that's like, it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you think, man, this seems like a perfectly reasonable time to watch a stream, give Umbrella Was Behind Everything a look. He's a nice, chill streamer, just playing the game, and he's kind of going about it in his own way. He's just not min-maxing, just kind of enjoying the game. And the second shout out that I want to give goes to a channel on YouTube again that most of you, if you're following the EverQuest Legends or EverQuest really at all, is a guy by the name of Wreck-It Rogue. He's currently running a challenge called Evercraft, and I love when people do stuff like this. But what he's doing is he's leveling while only wearing gear that he himself has crafted. That kind of puts a whole new spin on the progression, really. I want to also give him some recognition for something else that he's done. In one of his episodes, he makes a reference to the new Ixar area that's called New Sibyllus Expedition, and he calls it not Cabalus. And I'm here for that. I love that because, come on, man. It was right there. Like, the developers had the opportunity. The name was literally just waiting for them to use it. So Wreck-It Rogue said what we were all thinking. This was just a massive missed opportunity by the developers. So from here on out, I will be referring to it as not Cabalus. And now, grab your drink, get comfortable, and let's get started with the Norrathian news. Now, last week I identified that this segment was going to have like patch notes and things like that in it. There's not going to be any patch notes in this one. That's intentional. It's not my intention, but it is intentional nonetheless. On August 11th, Brassa posted the following announcement, which I'm going to read for you here. Hello, Legends. There will not be a patch tomorrow, August 11th, as we will be moving to a bi-weekly patch schedule starting next week, with a patch on Tuesday, August 18th. Rest assured, we have plenty of changes and improvements that we are eager to get out to you. We appreciate your patience and look forward to sharing the latest updates on the 18th. Wow, that sure would be a kick in the pants to any newly created podcasts that were created around the expectation that there would be a weekly news cycle. Sure would suck for those people, wouldn't it? Well, either way, here's to hoping that the 18th gives us news that we can all raise our steins to. But in the meantime, I want to circle back to something from the previous patch that revolved around Upper Guk. The patch notes had said that the placeholders were removed, and I didn't really explain what that meant. Now, I was reminded through some critiques that this show is not just for the old heads out there, but it's also for those who are taking their very first steps into Norrath with EverQuest Legends. So, for those people, a placeholder is a word used for like a mob that can spawn in place of the rare that you were hoping would spawn. So you go to the spawn location of where you know the rare would spawn, you kill the placeholder, and then you just wait for the next spawn, and you hope that it's the rare mob that spawns and not another placeholder. Now, to give an example, like a practical example of what that actually means, it means that in Upper Guk, the Froglock Shin Lord, the guy that drops the Ghoulbane weapon, farming him is going to be much easier because you're no longer waiting through your spawn cycle and getting a placeholder. Every time the spawn cycle completes, the person spawning is going to be the Froglock Shin Lord. That's going to make getting the Ghoulbane and the Fiery Avenger much easier. And also, by extension, the Shadow Knight epic weapon, should that become a thing when the Ruins of Canarch expansion launches for EverQuest Legends. Now, that was a one-line patch note that on the surface didn't look like much, and I admittedly myself, I didn't really recognize what all it really meant until you actually dig down into it and see what it means to people that need that sword. The removal of placeholders is actually a big deal. So here's to hoping that Game John continues this trend and goes about removing placeholders from other rare spawn locations. But first, let's get into our first quick tip of this episode. This particular quick tip will be discussing the easiest way to leave an instance. Now, some will hear this quick tip and say, Nocturne, you got it all wrong. The easiest way to leave an instance is to just die, because there's hardly any death penalties in this game. And I agree. However, if you would rather just not die, or you don't want to have to slog your way back up to the very top of the instance that you just, spent 3 hours clearing to the bottom of, there's another way. And that way is to use the difficulty button. If you click that difficulty button, you'll be given an option to select a public instance. There'll be, I think there's 4 different difficulties for the public instances. If you select one of those, it'll just teleport you right back to the entrance. But now let's take a step into our 3-way theory for the week. Now, this week, 3-way theory is going to work a little bit different. Typically, this segment focuses on how 3 different classes combine to make the ultimate powerful character. But this week alone, I want to focus on a single class that has just been getting a ton of love from the community, and it literally is game-changing. That class is the Enchanter. Now, in traditional EverQuest, Enchanters have always had crazy tools available to them. They have some of the best crowd control in the game. They can slow, they can haste, drain mana, lower resistances, and just flat out make mobs stand around looking confused. Now that power usually comes with some limitations. Specifically, they can't really take any damage. Like they don't have any armor class to speak of. They don't have a lot of hit points. Their ability to do damage is, minuscule compared to some of the other classes out there. And it doesn't really have any form of healing on its own. But here in EverQuest Legends, that changes everything because the Enchanter is just one part of a 3-class build that you've created. You can pair that control package with a healing class or a tanking class or any other, DPS class in the game. Let's start by talking about their mana drains, because holy cow, I have watched people annihilate Lady Vox and Lord Nagafen because they can just drain the mana right out of them. You also have crowd control. So if you've pulled 30 mobs or less, I want to repeat that, 30 mobs or less, as an Enchanter, you just mesmerize everything in the room and attack one mob at a time. And Enchanters have always had a pet, but not like they do in EverQuest Legends. In EverQuest Legends, their pet is a warrior and a paladin. That paladin comes with lay on hands. So that gives them a durable pet that can spot heal and also has lay on hands. As if that wasn't enough, they also get haste. So they can haste their entire group, including themselves and that pet. And they can also slow the mobs. They can lower resistances. It's getting a little crazy out there. I'm almost feeling like they might be a little overpowered. I say that as coming from a melee heavy class where the higher level I get, the more and more weak I feel. I want to take a second to address something that I just casually dropped on everybody here. And that is, I just said, the Enchanter pet is a warrior and a paladin. All of the pets, I believe all player pets, are 2 classes. They each have their own utility. You'd have to look at the whole list. But something that needs to also be said about that, because it can change the outcome of an encounter, is that mobs can also multi-class. As you increase in difficulty from D0 up to D4, enemies become more dangerous, generally speaking, mostly with more hit points and then running faster and maybe larger aggro radius. But the higher level you go in difficulty, the more multi-classed mobs you run into. At the highest difficulties, you'll encounter full-on, 3-class mobs. That creates a little bit of a problem at times. Oh, and speaking about Lady Vox and Lord Nagafen, I wanted to bring up something that I don't think I've addressed yet. I should have just added it to a quick tip. But anyway, here it is. It's a free quick tip for you folks. They both fear. They're dragons. They have dragon roar, so they have a fear ability. However, in EverQuest Legends, fear and charm works a little bit different. If you're solo, they don't affect you. If you're in a group, they do affect you and they become the problem that we all know and love. But that's why you see so many people soloing stuff, is because they don't get feared or charmed, or I don't think you lose any control of your character other than stuns. Boy, do you find some stuns. All right, folks, it's time for another quick tip. You know what? I'm feeling pretty generous. I'm just going to give a couple of quick tips here. Not just one, maybe 2 or 3. I don't know. We'll see what happens. First one I want to talk about is going to be food and drink. Are you wondering why the game keeps yelling at you that you're hungry and you're thirsty? Well, man, I got some good news for you. Turns out the reason you're thirsty and hungry is because you don't have any food or drink in your inventory. But there's some things about the way food and drink works in this game that you should probably be aware of. When you're thirsty, your mana regen is affected. And when you get hungry, then your health and I believe endurance regen is affected. I'm not entirely sure. I believe the endurance also gets affected. Your character will consume food and drink in a weird way. There's not like a dedicated food or drink slot. So you have to place them in your inventory in fairly specific slots. It starts with the top leftmost inventory slot, and then it just moves to the right and then down. So if that first top left slot contains a bag, then that same rule applies of top left going right then down. It just applies to the slots within that bag before it then moves on to the top rightmost inventory slot. It works kind of like, like how a typewriter would. Oh my God, I'm so old. Okay, well, whatever. But a quick PSA about the food items is that sometimes food or drink are used for quest items. If you went and got something specifically for a quest, be careful what slot you have it in, lest your character consume it on your way to turn in the quest. All right, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to do 2 more quick tips, and then we'll move on to the Akanon adjustments segment. So the next quick tip is going to be about the boots of the long road. These boots are also known as the tutorial boots. They're super easy to obtain. At a base level, they have 4 AC and 5 hit points. More importantly, they have a clickable run speed buff. And like our old friend Billy Mays would have said, but wait, there's more. And this next part is like a quick tip inside of a quick tip. It's kind of like a quick tip inception. You have no idea how many times I had to just re-record that little tidbit there, but we're just going to leave it. Let's keep going. The tip within a tip is you're going to do a lot of the steps of this tutorial before you ever even get told what to do. So here's how I say you can speed this up if you want. Once you log in to the tutorial zone, you're going to have a note to Doug. He's just on the other side of the bridge that you just showed up in. Go over there, hand him your note, and then go into the building that's right nearby. Inside there is a female vendor named Dougina. You want to purchase the package for Old Doug. Don't worry, it doesn't cost a cent. It's totally free. Now, before you head over to Old Doug's cave, there's a little flight of stairs, I guess you could call it, off to the left there. You climb up those stairs, and in there is where Dead Doug is, and he's standing next to some skeletons. You kill those skeletons and collect their skulls. Now you can either turn those skulls in right away, one of each type, for a pair of boots, or just save them. But the important part is that you killed them, and now the timer on their respawn is already running. So now you go over to Old Doug in the cave, give him the package for Old Doug that you bought from Dougina. So a lot of Dougs going on here. He will give you a pair of boots. Now, I recommend you don't merge those boots immediately. You're going to end up getting 3 copies eventually. I say wear 1 pair in your feet slot and then put the other 2 in your 2 any slots. It's a pretty decent bump in armor class and hit points for that first 10 level slog that you're about to embark on. Now, if later you want to extract the run speed clicky exaltation, you only have to get the boots up to a +2. Once you're out of the tutorial zone, you can't go back, so collect as many pairs as you're willing to wait on spawns for, or alternatively, you can buy them for 16.5 platinum from multiple vendors. I don't know if they're all called the same thing, but the ones that I find them on are the adventuring supplies vendors. So if you find yourself needing another pair or 2 later down the road, they're always purchasable. And now for the final quick tip of this double quick tip episode. I want to talk about something that became a super hot item this week. It's called the Soldier's Brooch, however you want to pronounce it. It's a ranged slot item whose stats are determined by your primary class. So whatever class you have in your primary class slot, that's what's going to determine which version of this range item you get. Now, there's some weird caveats going on right now, and that's why I wanted to kind of highlight this. First off, if you're a monk, you apparently are not important enough to get your own copy of this. Monks just receive the rogue version. I mean, it literally says class rogue on it. Also, and this one is a little more interesting, I think, funny, if you will. Necromancers are receiving the item with 1 dexterity on it, which seems like it's more meant for Shadow Knights, and Shadow Knights are receiving a version of this range item with 1 charisma, which appears to be better suited for necromancers. Just be aware that if you hear about this ranged slot item, that you are aware that your primary class determines it, and then there's those weird caveats with the Necromancer and Shadow Knights. So now that the whole quick tip inception business is over with, I want to jump on into the Akanon adjustments, and this week we're going to talk about the map. So first off, there's 2 map packs besides the default maps that everybody's using. And those 2 map packs are Bree Walls and Goods. If you just Google for those, you'll find them. I think one of them is found in somebody's GitHub, but either way, they're on the internet. You can find them. I personally have both installed because they show me the rares and the ground spawn locations. They may not remain accurate for very long, but they are for some things. And honestly, even with both of those available to me, I kind of keep just using the default map. To be clear, Game John also plans, as I understand it, to eventually have a map for every zone once they're done revamping zones. So the first step to customizing your map would be to right-click on the map window's title bar near the bottom of the little window that'll pop up. You'll see some toggleable items, including players, other pets, NPCs, and ring. The ring option displays the little green boundary showing the area around you. And inside of that ring, you'll be able to see mobs if you have the NPCs option turned on. You can hover over those dots that are on the map and you'll see the names of the mobs. Now, for the old school players, it kind of feels a little like having a built-in show EQ. If you know, you know. Another of the option from that right-clicking of the title bar is called display types. I would say, honestly, just click through a few of the options, see which one suits you better. One note, before you make any change to that, see what it's already on so that if you find that you don't like any of the other options, that you can go back to the way you had it before. Otherwise, you have to just keep going through. I think there's like 9 different options, so that could take a little bit. Another of the settings are the Filter Z and the Auto Z. I keep both of those enabled. The Filter Z tells the map to display the geometry near your current elevation at full opacity. Any other elevations, it'll fade it out, and that's based on whatever the fade setting is, which I keep mine around like 15%. Now, the Auto Z is a little bit different, and I'll be honest with you, I don't really understand what it's doing, how it functions, and that's even after reading the description. But I'm choosing to heed the warning of one Aloysius O'Hare, and I won't go poking around in things I don't understand, or he'll be my worst nightmare. He's Frankenstein's head on a spider's body. Sorry about that, folks. I had to include that from my boy. And as a final note regarding the map, I recommend just steering clear of the Z-min and Z-max input fields. Every time I would click into those fields, I would lose keyboard input. And the only way I could clear it was if I would right-click somewhere on the map to begin the find feature, and then you could click on End Find, which will be a little button up in the top right-hand corner. And once I would click on that, the keyboard would then start working fine again. And now it's time for the segment from last week's episode that I was the most proud of, the Lore and Legend segment. There are nights in the Nocturnal Tavern when every conversation seems determined to compete with every other conversation. Mugs strike tables, adventurers argue over which loot has the best stats. Someone near the back insists their plan would have worked if the cleric had simply healed more. Every so often, a story begins quietly enough that the rest of the room seems to lower its voice around it. This is one of those stories. It begins with two names, Lady Vox, Lord Nagafen. One surrounded by ice, the other buried beneath fire. Lovers separated by distance, punishment, and a fear of what their union might create. To understand that fear, we have to look back toward one of the most dangerous beings in the history of dragonkind, Carafirm, the Sleeper. A prismatic dragon born from parents of opposing elements, Carafirm possessed power so great that his very existence became a warning. Vishan, the mother of all dragons, set forth dragon law that forbids dragons of opposing elements to mate, and that dragons were to never kill one of their own kind. Then came Vox and Nagafen. Lady Vox was a white dragon of frost and cold. Lord Nagafen was a red dragon of flame. Their connection crossed the elemental boundary that dragon law forbids. Another prismatic offspring would threaten far more than the authority of dragonkind. It could threaten Norrath itself. As no dragon was allowed to slay them, Vox and Nagafen were separated and imprisoned by the Ring of Scale. Lady Vox was confined within Permafrost Keep. Lord Nagafen was banished beneath the burning lands of Lavastorm, deep inside the lair that would bear his name. Ice in one corner of the world, fire in another. Close enough to exist beneath the same sky, but far enough apart to deny them the future they had pursued. There is something fitting about where Vox and Nagafen were imprisoned. Vox, surrounded by ice so cold and still that the entire dungeon seemed built to preserve her sentence. Nagafen, buried beneath heat and stone with fire and lava filling the passages around him. Each remains completely within their own element and completely separated from each other. Their punishment turned both dragons into legends for the mortals who would eventually come looking for them. Their plan failed. Their union was prevented, but their names remain legendary. Lady Vox and Lord Nagafen, Ice and Fire, the Lady and the Lord. Still separated, still remembered, and still waiting for the next adventurer who believes they are prepared. I first want to give a big thank you to Umbrella Was Behind Everything for providing the inspiration for this lore and legends segment. I had another topic in mind, but after watching him slay both Vox and Nagafen, I thought it would be fitting to add this as a tribute to his successes that evening. Now imagine hearing the story of Lady Vox and Lord Nagafen when, as a brand new player, you've so far only killed like rats and little skeletons and stuff, and you hear about dragons. This is back before zones were clearly mapped out. In fact, there was no mapping system in the game back then. Most of us had map binders that we would print maps out from, I want to say it was EQ Atlas, I think was the website. And we had just had binders full of all these printed maps. For early players, Lady Vox and Lord Nagafen represented the first time you would ever encounter a true dragon. These were like destinations for guilds. Like you had to do a ton of preparation to even consider heading into these encounters. Lady Vox was all cold-based attacks, so you would need to work on your cold resistance gear set. She also had a complete heal, so you had to make sure there was interrupts that were available to be able to stop her from complete healing herself. Nagafen, you had to have a separate set of gear that had fire resistance on it. Both of these dragons at the time, there was no way, as far as I remember, there was no way to prevent the fear mechanic. You just had to deal with the fact that you were getting feared. Now here in EverQuest Legends, the tables have turned quite a bit, I would say. You as a player are much more powerful. If you're solo, you're not getting feared. However, you will have to contend with the fact that as you increase the difficulty tier, both Nagafen and Vox have the ability to multi-class also. And I kind of feel like that might be problematic for a melee heavy build or just me in general, I guess. Okay, let's get this show on the road and let's head on over to our Kanos message board segment. But before we actually check in with the Kanos message board, here's a classic EverQuest name hiding something in plain sight. If you spell Kanos backwards, you get Sony EQ. Now, once you've seen it, you're never going to be able to unsee it. I will also go on record as stating, yes, I am aware the developers have come out and flatly stated it is Kinos, but sorry, folks, too many years of calling it Kanos and the violation of that set in stone English language rule about Q and U, it's just going to remain Kanos to me forever. Who's with me out there? So as we were, this week's Kanos message board, I want to introduce everybody to the guild that I'm currently a member of on the Freeport server. The name of the guild is Ve Victus. If you're looking for a friendly place to hang out, to meet some new people, or just find others to, run around in the game with, you should come check out this guild. You can find the guild's Discord invitation on the official EverQuest Legends Discord server. You got to go to the Freeport channel and then under the server discussion heading and look for the Ve Victus post. I've asked permission from the guild leader to read this part out, just so that people are aware of what they're getting into and, to figure out, is this something that might be a fit for you? So here we go. This is, you would commonly call this like the rules. This is the covenant. I'm not going to read it word for word. I'm going to paraphrase because it's pretty obvious stuff that just basically reads, be a decent human being. So section 1 is real life wins. Nobody tracks your attendance. The guild treats EverQuest Legends as something that should improve your free time rather than becoming another obligation. Real life comes first. Section 2, don't be cruel. The guild jokes around often. The boundary is simple. Be funny without being cruel. Section 3 is leave the mortal world at the door. No politics, no real world arguments. Ve Victus is intended to be a place where people can step away from all that noise and just spend time in Norrath together enjoying a game. Section 4 is no drama. Handle disagreements like adults. If something cannot be resolved calmly, move the conversation into a private message. If help is needed beyond that, then, involve an officer, but also do that privately as well. Section 5, play together when you can. Solo play is always fine. Ve Victus is still a social guild, so members are encouraged to say hello, answer questions, offer invites to people to come out and group with them, and to just help other players whenever they can. Now, the Covenant also requires everyone to follow Discord's terms of service and the rules of EverQuest Legends. So, don't spam, don't advertise, or don't send unsolicited direct messages to members. Respect the officer's decisions and raise any disagreements you might have with anybody privately. Again, if you're on the Freeport server and you're looking for a friendly place to hang out or meet some new friends, look for Ve Victus in the Freeport channel under the server discussion on the official EverQuest Legends Discord. That's where you'll find the invite link. And now for this week's new and old friends segment. Now, I don't think I mentioned this last week, but there is a post on the official EverQuest Legends Discord called Finding Old Friends by Name and Server. That'd be a great place to go look for old friends. You know what I mean? It's in the title. However, it's in a weird location. You can find it in the feedback channel under the discussions heading. That seems like a weird place to go looking to find old friends. But whatever works, that's where it is. Last week, I had also mentioned a couple of times, I think, the guild I first spent any real time in with any MMO. It was a guild called Celestial Rising. And I'm going to apologize to most of the general audience now because most of you don't care about anything I'm about to say. I just want to put the names out there of the individuals that I remember grouping with or being in the guild with in general. And then also there's a video that the main cleric of our guild put together when the guild kind of fell apart. Now, I had already drifted off to WoW by this time, but she made a video. It's like a goodbye video with some music. It's not on YouTube or anything, But in that video, I saw some names of people I had just totally forgotten about. So I just want to take this opportunity. I mean, it is my podcast after all, and you guys are more than welcome to shut off at this point. I get it. It's just literally going to be a listing of names. And it's just in case maybe one of these people hears their name said, or somebody else knows their in-game name from EverQuest back in, 2002, 2003, that maybe they can, spread the word. And I would love for any of these people to come into this version of EverQuest. So here we go. I'm going to be reading these names in alphabetical order. So in the words of Jackie Gleason, and away we go. Acolyte, Ieni, Arn Batagern, Bata, Bognar, Boomsaber, Dot Prick, Elarak, Fade, Felicix, Fendel, Fidul, Fintenny, Gulthin, Grabats, Jippo, Hyperstorm, Hypnotica, Ilyuma, Gibblestonian, Candalf, Killing, Kinnek, Corridan, Crestlock, Cronus, Quani, Lawny, Lilladilly, Lenine, Medgar, Mitzi, Negator, Nielin, Orish, Paw, Patan, or Piton, Pizzicato, Prewin, Rayla, Savinia, Sazabi, Shadow, Skygen, Sotomiyav, Suvu, Sorshale, Soja, Talon, Talaz, Talin, Tamanya, Terador, Thrus, Tignis, Tjakote, Uldot, Ungrim, Vocek, Wafu, Wutan, Yanadriel, and Zexi. Those were my guildmates from Celestial Rising on the Zev server. If any of you are listening, I would love to see you come back around in this version of EverQuest. So after I got done reading all that, it dawned on me I hadn't actually mentioned my name in this episode, or my wife's name. My name was Fists O'Malley. I was a human monk. I also then started playing a barbarian beast lord named Newfist. However, because of the edgelord in me back then, I couldn't just spell it Newfist, so I spelled it Nufist. So it kind of looked like Nuffist. So maybe that's how you were pronouncing it. But my wife's name was Sumatri Lapu Felice. She was a wood elf druid. All right, folks, I think that's going to bring episode 001, The Lord and Lady, to a close. If you have a correction, a quick tip, a question, or a story you think belongs in a future episode, send it my way. I can be reached at Nocturne13 at Twitch, on YouTube at Nocturne Gaming 6000. Discord, I'm actually trying to decide if I actually need a specific Discord for this. Let me know in the comments or in an email or whatever. On Twitter or X, I can be found at Nocturne Gaming 1. And you can send me an email at nocturnegaming@gmail.com. All of those links will be placed in the show notes now that I know where to put them. That's going to close the book on episode 001 of the Nocturnal Tavern. Thank you for spending part of my birthday here with me. And remember, whether you're in Norrath or that scary place called IRL, keep your aggro low, your spirits high, and we'll save your spot at the bar at the Nocturnal Tavern. See you next week, folks.